morning, everyone. Today I would like to talk to you about one of my favorite subjects of all time, the Tanakh cult stand. Cult stand has a lot of negative connotations, so let's just call it an offering stand. And if you're reading in the Bible, you're going to see a word for altar or altars in Hebrew. It is bama or bamot. Means an altar, a high place, and they were scattered all throughout ancient Israel and Judah, and that's where people did sacrifices. They could have been libations or cereal grains. In fact, there's a lot of cereal grain offerings that are found mentioned in the Bible, and you're thinking, well, what about it? Well, I'm going to tell you about it. When you're reading, especially in Genesis, you hear of Yahweh being described in, another big word, anthropomorphic terms. Of course, that means describing the deity in human-like attributes. Now, they don't describe him looking like anyone. They don't say, oh, he looks like Gregory Peck or someone like that. But they mention that God walks through the Garden of Eden. That's Adam and Eve, hear him walking. After Noah makes his sacrifice after the flood, it says God smells the good smells from the sacrifice. And there are other places where they mention his hands and his eyes and his ears and his nose. So very anthropomorphic. But the interesting thing is the Israelite religion did not have depictions of Yahweh. It was a very rare thing because it was one of the first, probably the first, religion to have an aniconic tradition. Here's my word, aniconic. That means without icons. And in fact, as you know, in the Decalogue, it says, you shall not make for yourselves an idol, whether it in the form of anything that is in heaven above, or is on the earth beneath, or is in the water under the earth. You shall not bow down to them. So that means don't make any images of Yahweh. You are not supposed to. Why? Because the neighboring religions, especially the Canaanites, all of their gods were portrayed in physical forms. So you find a lot of artifacts of Baal and Asherah. And so that's very, very interesting that they portrayed their gods as physical beings, but the Israelites made it a point not to. So what about this Tanakh cult stand that they found? Well, that's very interesting, and I just love it. And if I could get a copy of it to have in my living room, I tell you I would, because it is cool. Now, Tanakh was a village in the Jezreel Valley. It's from the Middle Age, Bronze II, around the end of the 17th century. And by that time, it was a Canaanite town. But by the time of the Iron Age I, which was 1200 to 900 BCE, it had become an Israelite town. And so this is where they found this artifact, this Tanakh cult stand, and it has provenance, and it is real. So we mentioned that, here are our names, Asherah and Baal were portrayed in physical forms. But, whoops, the Lord was not. So in this cult stand there are 4 layers, as you can see, and the top has a winged horse with a sun disk above it. And then the next layer are lions with either ibex or goats surrounding a tree of life, or sometimes thought of it as an Asherah, because Asherah can mean a sacred pole, and you'll see that a lot in the Bible. The third layer, I'm going to save for last, and the fourth layer, there is a nude female, and they presume it's a god. They think it could be Asherah, and she's holding the ears of two lions. And of course, lions were the symbol of Judah. Why she's holding their ears, I don't know. And so the third layer is my favorite layer because it's the best. It has two sphinxes, winged sphinxes, which are probably depictions of cherubim, which are the winged creatures you read about, especially in Isaiah. But they're flanking an open blank space. So the opinion is the cherubim are showing the enthronement of Yahweh. But Yahweh cannot be depicted. So he is depicted as being this empty space. So that is really one of my favorite things. And when you're saying, where would you get the horse from? Horses, they often use those in symbolic acts of worship. And in fact, King Josiah, number one A+ king, because you can read in Kings 23, is it 22 and 23, all about King Josiah and his rule. And it says, 23:11, he removed the horses that the kings of Judah had dedicated to the sun. So that's that top layer. There's a horse and a sun disk. And the sun disk they think they may have gotten from Akhenaten, the Egyptian king who was known as the Sun King. So there you go, a little bit about Aniconic tradition, how they have physical evidence of Israelites borrowing from their neighbors, doing things they shouldn't have done, as Josiah says, and showing that you can't show Yahweh. You can have something that indicates Yahweh, but you're not going to see him. So I hope that leaves something to your imagination. I hope you enjoyed this, and I will talk to you later. Have an absolutely fantastic day. Bye-bye.